Texas sheet cake, take 1. Is this even a take? I guess it's a take.
I'll take it.
Okay.
I was like, we're only doing one take.
Yeah, this is only one
out.
take.
I don't want to do it again.
All right.
Hi, I'm Genevieve, and I'm making Texas sheet cake.
And I'm Priya, and I will be helping her and pestering her with questions.
We're making it together. Hi, I'm Genevieve, and together we're making Texas sheet cake. It's more fun to make it together.
There we go. We're going to be making this together. I'm from Texas, and I was like, there's this cake that I kind of grew up seeing at potlucks and birthday parties, and I think it would be a really fun cake to publish a recipe for and look into the history of. And you were already developing a recipe for Texas sheet cake when I approached you. I've never made a Texas sheet cake. I've only ever eaten Texas sheet cakes.
I feel like and I feel like it's very important for me to say up front right now that I'm not from Texas, but
it's okay, we accept you as one of our own, Genevieve.
But I love Texas. I have family in Texas, and I love, I've always loved visiting them, and all things Texan, Frito pie, King Ranch chicken, especially Texas sheet cake as a baker. It's a one-pot recipe that is actually, you can eat it within 45 minutes of the time you start baking.
That's huge.
There are a few essential components to what makes Texas sheet cake. One is that it's baked in a sheet, and like a really thin sheet. You're actually pouring a warm frosting or a hot frosting onto a warm cake, so they really like meld together. Chocolate and chocolate, that's big. Chocolate and chocolate and pecans.
My mom goes to like a special place to get her pecans because like she wants like Texas grown pecans. It's called Texas Pecan Company.
So this is the butter that's going to go on the cake. And there's one thing I really hate, which is wasting any ingredients at all. So even when you're putting the butter, somewhere else, and you have this little bit of butter, take the butter paper. It's not often enough, right? You can see it's not often enough, but I want to make sure I wipe off every last bit.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant.
Yeah. So
and
take the side paper and use this to be your spreader instead of using, well, you could use your fingers, but.
I didn't know what this was called for most of my childhood, and when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, that cake that was always there, it was just cake. It's like when you're in Texas, people aren't like Texas sheet cake, they're just like cake.
This is not traditional, but I like to use hot coffee actually, just because the coffee gives the chocolate an even like deeper, richer flavor. So you can absolutely use hot water.
But there are a lot of really interesting variations too. While I was researching this, there is what's called a white Texas sheet cake, where you, instead of cocoa, you do vanilla, which to me feels
that doesn't feel right.
Like not a Texas
that
sheet
doesn't
cake.
feel right. Yeah,
but that exists. Texas sheet cakes that have Dr. Pepper in the cake.
Oh, I've seen that. Or Coca-Cola.
Yeah, there are ones
Coca-Cola
that have cinnamon and chili powder in the batter too.
Yeah. So here I just mixed it with instant coffee. Oftentimes I will just make sure I make extra coffee in my coffee pot in the morning if I know I'm going to be making the cake later. But you do want it to be hot, because at this stage what I'm doing is I'm actually adding cocoa powder to the butter here, and what that does is it both blooms the chocolatey flavor, and it also helps it dissolve, right? There aren't any lumps, and then this will help
coffee.
too.
Oh, pecans! Shoot, this is why I set the timer. These are nice and fragrant.
All right, so once that cocoa powder is all mixed in here, then I add the hot water coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, if you add it all at once, then it's so much liquid to the cocoa powder that it does become a little harder to try to actually get rid of lumps, because you can take this off the heat, and while this is still hot, again, there's no cooling here, I'm scraping as much as I can.
As much as you can,
here,
no waste.
We're gonna use this exact same pot later to make the icing, and I am lazy enough that I don't wanna wash it between. Do you wanna fold, or do you want me to, at this stage?
If I can fold, you can fold. So when Genevieve told me she was developing a recipe for Texas sheet cake, I was like, well, this is going to be like the most thoughtful Texas sheet cake recipe, because when Genevieve writes a recipe, especially a baking recipe, she's literally considering like the fact that like you're not washing the pot so you can use the pot again. So you just know this is a great recipe. Isn't it great to have like a cheerleader?
It is really nice. It is so nice. It doesn't feel deserved, but it's so fun. And I'm adding sour cream. So most Texas sheet cakes that I've seen actually call for buttermilk.
Yep.
You can absolutely swap in buttermilk here in equal amounts, you totally can. The cake will be just a little less rich and your batter might not rise quite as much. It won't be quite
I think
as
it's a brilliant swap.
substantial.
I used to just like eat sour cream out of the tub. Or we would go to Taco Bell
That's
and I'd get a
hardcore.
7-layer
That's
burrito.
really
And I'd be
like-
like, can I get a side of sour cream? And just like eat the sour cream.
You don't need a mixer, though I will say this is a super awkward.
I'm a lefty.
Oh, you're a lefty. We should be on opposite. We should be switching sides here. We're just going to mix it up in here. So just fold it again,
Great.
just until there are no streaks.
Excellent.
Here, I'll give you a little. Do you want a little trick?
Yes,
for
give,
folding?
yeah,
All
give
right.
me a trick.
So when you're folding, you want to rotate the bowl in the opposite.
Oh.
You sort of minimize the ways in which you're working the batter, but you can also have it go more quickly. It's like the letter J over and over, right? So you're just doing J.
This is very, my mom used to make, not a Texas sheet cake, but a chocolate cake for my birthday every year. And she was very particular about scraping every last bit of the batter, the ganache.
Your mom. But you can
Oh.
see this is like a super thin
This batter tastes great.
And this is not a case in which you're gonna like tap the pan, because I actually don't want to get rid of these bubbles. I want to make sure that they rise this really thin cake. All right, so we want the frosting to be pretty much as hot as possible when we pour it on. So we're not going to make it right now. We're going to make it right when the cake comes out of the oven, but we can go ahead and get the ingredients already.
All right.
All right.
Cool.
Which Vaughn has graciously done for us, so. All right, we're going to see if this is ready.
Okay, it smells incredible.
So you can
in
see
here.
how it's a little glossy on top, and I'm just going to stick a toothpick right in the middle, and this is exactly where I want it. Just a few crumbs, like literally 2. And so we are going to get started on our frosting.
And once again, as a reminder, did not clean this pan, just
you can
wiped
see
it nicely.
residual stuff, because essentially we're putting the same things in here: melted butter and cocoa powder.
Yep.
The cocoa that was left in here, I don't want it to scorch and taste burnt at all. So
Right.
while the butter's melting, I sort of just make sure none of it starts to burn.
It smells like chocolate chip pancakes in here. I'm just like manifesting myself at breakfast at Genevieve's. Silky and glossy.
Yep.
And if your heat is not already off, you turn it off.
Yeah, my
for this
heat's
stuff.
off.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a cooked frosting, but again, it's like a fine line between that and scorched. We can just be pretty vigorous about it. I have tried this with a whisk. If you whisk, and especially if you whisk too vigorously, you can actually cause this to separate a little, and we don't really want that.
And you can see it's like already starting to
Yeah,
like
that's what I'm
fudgeify.
like. All right, well, you taste while I'm gonna go ahead and pour. So if you want it sweeter.
Oh my God. No, it's perfect.
All right.
Oh, look at that.
All right.
So traditionally you
Yeah,
put the pecans in the frosting.
It's a matter of personal taste. We can both start doing this possibly sacrilegious thing, scattering the pecans on top, because I like them crunchy, right? So you get this fudgy frosting, you have this really nice fluffy cake underneath. Hey, you get this really nice crunch, right? It's like the first thing that hits you.
This is gonna be my first time trying Texas sheet cake with pecans on top.
Oh no.
I will say the reason I like the pecans in the frosting traditionally is because I like the like crunchy, gone soggy texture.
It's like the same people who like pie crust that's baked and it gets sort of soggy
Yes,
and
I love-
doughy.
yes.
I hate that.
Okay, this explains a lot. One really cool thing that Genevieve told me about this cake off camera is that when you first eat it, it has like a fluffy texture, but then once you put it in the fridge, the texture sort of changes and evolves, and I kind of love that about this
Yeah,
cake.
it gets a little bit more like the sort of death by chocolate cake type of denser cake. And then if you freeze it, and I for sure eat this straight from the freezer, it gets this really great brownie like texture.
So you're getting like 3 desserts
You
in one.
basically get 3 desserts in one.
Cut bigger slices because they're like big, thin slices. Oh,
All right.
looks pretty beautiful.
Ambidextrous.
There we go. So good. Pecans on top are great.
Right?
I think it's
Nice and
great.
crunchy.
This is really bringing me back to like pool parties in middle school.
Yeah.
This is one of the best cake recipes that exists, I think. I usually eat it with my hands, honestly.
So-
I'm gonna eat this entire slab.
That's the point.
It is the point.
What's your elevator pitch for what a Texas sheet cake is?
I would say better than a cosmic brownie. Like cosmic brownie, but so much better.